Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. It's a beautiful day here in Ohio and we are finally getting some ripe tomatoes so that I can bring you some fun canning recipes for the summer. So today is going to be a small batch tomato sauce. In particular, I'm going to turn it into pizza sauce. The recipe is from the Complete Book of Small Batch Preserving. I do like this book. A friend of mine went through a Master Food Preservers course and this was recommended by one of her instructors, so I do like this book. I do use this book and I do trust the recipes in this book. It's fantastic because, as the title implies, it's all small batches. Now if you want a larger batch, it's totally fine to double or triple the recipes in here, but I'm going to stick to the original recipe as written, and we're going to get about 7 cups of seasoned tomato sauce. Now I'm going to be making in particular pizza sauce, so I am choosing dried herbs to infuse in mine that are that you would find typically in pizza sauce. But if you just wanted a seasoned tomato sauce, it's totally fine to use any dried herb, or you could leave all the herbs out, leave it a basic tomato sauce. I do want to point out that for acidity, for this particular recipe, they are using 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar or lemon juice. If you are going to be using the red wine vinegar, make sure that it is at least 5% acidity listed on the bottle. If you're using lemon juice, make sure you use bottled lemon juice. Those of you who aren't aware, we'd like to use bottled lemon juice in canning because the acidity is always consistent. If you're using fresh lemon juice, the consistency could vary depending on the lemon you're using. So we're going to be using 12 cups of chopped ripe plum tomatoes. So you want a plum or a paste tomato here. Slicing tomatoes would be way too watery for sauce, so you want, like I said, a plum, a roma, or a paste tomato. We need 12 cups chopped. We need 1 cup of chopped onion, 2 cloves of fresh garlic minced. For seasoning, they are recommending 2 tablespoons of chopped fresh oregano or 1 teaspoon of dried. I'm changing that up and you'll see that in just a second. 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of black ground pepper, 2 bay leaves, the 2 tablespoons of vinegar or lemon juice like I talked about, and 1/2 teaspoon of pickling salt. That's the original recipe and I will list it in the description box below. I've changed up my seasonings, but they're all dried seasonings, and that's a totally safe change. There are 3 ways that you can do this to prep it for processing. Their instructions are to chop your tomatoes unpeeled. You want to core and chop them unpeeled, and then they are recommending that you put the tomatoes, onions, garlic, your seasonings, bay leaves in a large stainless steel or enameled saucepan. Bring it to a boil over high heat, reduce to heat, boil gently uncovered, stirring occasionally for 1 1/4 hours or until very thick. Then they want you to press it through a food mill or a coarse sieve to remove the seeds and the skins. That's completely acceptable way to do it. I am not a huge fan of food mills. I do have the Victoria food mill, and I think it's messy and it's a pain to clean up, and I just don't care for it. So the method that I am going to use is, just for reference, it's from the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. You guys know I like this book. On page 364 under their pizza sauce, they recommend making a puree, and the way that they do that is to, in case you don't have a food strainer, is you can blanch, peel, core, seed, and chop your tomatoes, place them in a colander and let stand for 15 minutes. Discard the liquid and puree your tomatoes in a food processor fitted with a metal blade. So that's another way to do it. The method I'm going to show you here is similar to that. I'm going to blanch my tomatoes, and the way you do that is you just place an X on the bottom of your tomatoes. You're going to put them in a pot, a few at a time, in a pot of boiling water. You're going to blanch them for approximately 60 seconds or so until the skins start to curl and pull away from the tomato. You're going to put the tomato, bring it out of the boiling water, put it in a ice water bath. Let it sit for 30 seconds or so till it's cool enough to handle. And then you're going to core the tomato, peel off the skin, and remove as many seeds as possible. I find that it's easy to just use my thumb to dig out the seeds. And then I'm going to coarsely chop them until I have 12 cups of coarsely chopped tomatoes. This recipe is intended to either be water bath or steam canned. I'm going to be steam canning mine. I have my steam canner on the stove. Make sure you follow the instructions that come with your steam canner. If you're water bath canning, as always, you need to have enough water to cover your jars by at least an inch. The other thing I want to mention is I often get asked, can I start my tomato sauce the day before? If I run out of time, can I refrigerate it overnight and process it the next day? And you absolutely can. All you have to do is just let it cool, stick it in the refrigerator after you've made your sauce, and then just make sure that you are using hot jars, hot or simmering water in your canner, and that you've brought your sauce back up to a boil before processing it. All right, once you get your 12 cups of roughly chopped tomatoes, then we're going to add 1 cup of chopped onion, 2 cloves of chopped garlic. I have a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of sugar, and a teaspoon of pepper, but of course all that seasoning is to taste. Then I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of dried basil, teaspoon of parsley flakes. I want about a tablespoon of oregano. I think oregano is what makes pizza sauce taste like pizza sauce, so that's my favorite. And then I'm going to add 1 bay leaf. And we're going to cook this for about an hour and a half until it starts to thicken up for us and the tomatoes break down. Then I'm going to remove the bay leaf and then I'm going to blitz it. So I'm going to turn up my heat to high until it gets going. Once it gets going, I'm going to turn it down to a nice simmer, let it simmer for about an hour and a half. Okay, I did want to mention that I was able to get rid of most of the seeds just by using my thumb to dig them out as I cored and chopped my tomatoes. If you want a seedless sauce, you'll probably want to use a food mill. I find something therapeutic about blanching and peeling tomatoes, so this is the method that I like, but again, you could totally use a food mill. If you use the food mill, you're going to run everything through the food mill after you cook it for the 1.5 hours. Okay guys, I have simmered my sauce for just over an hour. How long you need to simmer your sauce will depend on the type of tomatoes you used. I had some beautiful paste tomatoes, which is what I recommend for any type of tomato sauce. So it didn't take very long for it to get nice. You can tell it's nice and thick here. If you have a juicier tomato, you'll have to cook it longer. You just want your sauce to start to thicken. So at this point, we are going to fish out the bay leaf or bay leaves, depending on how many you used. I only used 1. You can use as many as you want for flavor. So we talked about acidifying. You have to use 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice or red wine vinegar. Red wine vinegar is absolutely delicious in tomato sauce, so that is what I'm going to be using here. Make sure the vinegar you use is at least 5% acidity. So we're going to add that to our tomatoes. And then we're going to blitz this. I am going to use a handheld blender to do mine. You could do it in batches in a regular blender if you wanted to, or you could also do it in a food processor. All right, I'm all done blitzing. See how nice and thick the sauce is? Perfect for pizza sauce. If it's still too runny for your liking, you can cook it longer to your desired thickness, but this is pretty good for me. So we are all set for canning. We are going to be processing in 1/2 pint jars. Since I'm using this for pizza sauce, that's about the size that you would need for a 14 to 16 inch pizza. You can process this in pints as well. The processing time is going to be the same either for pints or 1/2 pint jars. So we are going to ladle our sauce, our hot sauce, in hot jars to a 1/2 inch headspace. This sauce is so good, you guys. I've made it a number of times and it is really, really tasty. Once you get to your 1/2 inch headspace, you're going to use a debubbling tool, plastic butter knife, or chopstick to remove the air bubbles from your jars. Then we're going to use a paper towel dipped in white vinegar to clean the rims. We don't want anything to interfere with getting a good seal. We're going to center our lids and add our rings to fingertip tight. And in the canner they go. Okay guys, I got exactly 7 1-cup jars. I have just a tiny bit left in my pan, so that recipe is spot on. I did want to mention that it's about 6 pounds of tomatoes, and that's about 12 cups of coarsely chopped. So like I said, I'm going to be steam canning. Your steam canner should have a dial on top that tells you when to start your processing time. If you are water bath canning, you will need to make sure you have enough water to cover your jars by at least 1 inch. You want to make sure that your water is simmering before you put your jars in your canner. Once your canner is up to temperature and you're in the green zone for your steam canning, or at a full rolling boil for water bath canning, whichever one you're doing, you want to adjust your heat just to maintain either the full rolling boil or to stay in your green zone according to your dial gauge on your canner. Now, steam canning. This recipe, whether it's in pints or half pint jars, takes 35 minutes, and that's for below 1,000 feet. For those of you who have to make altitude adjustments. For steam canning, it's not recommended that you process for longer than 45 minutes. So if you guys are making adjustments and you have to go beyond the 45 minutes, you cannot steam can this. You need to water bath can instead. So process for 45 minutes and then I'll bring you back. Okay guys, we are finished processing. Processed for 35 minutes like I told you. I'll just give you, it pinged, a nice close-up look there. Beautiful sauce, so delicious. Now I did want to mention that before you can up your sauce, make sure you taste it. If it's too acidic tasting to you, you can certainly add more sugar. That will also depend on your tomatoes. Mine were very sweet, perfectly ripe, and really yummy. So I only needed the teaspoon of sugar, but if you want to add more sugar, you certainly can, and that will help to balance out some of the acidity. I know some people don't like that lemon juice flavor or the vinegar flavor in the background, but actually I love the red wine vinegar in this. It's absolutely delicious, and the sugar is just enough to balance out that acidity. I thought it was fantastic, but again, that will depend on the acidity of your tomatoes and how they're tasting as well, how ripe they are. You can also make this a basic tomato sauce, like I said, and season it however you want to, but it's really fantastic. Use whatever method you want to use for getting your puree, either using a food strainer or the method that I demonstrated here, or the one I mentioned by ball. So if you have any comments or questions, leave them for me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Have a great one.